Welcome everyone to Creative Chats. Today I am joined by my friend Manu Burbin, and we are going to be talking about where to start with creative AI. I'm Phil. Manu's that way. Say hi,
Hello.
Manu. And yeah, we're going to try and keep this light, try and keep it actionable, and imagine that we have a bunch of people that have never tried this before and how we can give them some good places to kick off. So firstly, I just want to know from you, what's your impression of, like, is there anything you'd want to demystify about AI? Is there anything that you'd want to set the scene with before we get into techie tools and things like that?
So you're obviously picking up my notes. But
No.
yes, like when we say like creative AI, I think there is a need to roll back and just see AI for what it is. It's just a new shiny tool. I don't know if somebody in the audience has seen Doctor Who, but basically this is the sonic screwdriver. And the sonic screwdriver, it's impressive, but it's nothing without the doctor. So, I mean, it's just a shiny tool. It's a very shiny, very impressive tool, but it's not created by itself. It doesn't solve complex problems. And like taking it out of that pedestal where it's just changing the future, revolutionizing everything, it's an amazing tool. It is. But we need to take it down a level. It's not about human. Artificial intelligence is intelligent like a parrot, like 100 parrots with duct tape are intelligent. It's not as intelligent as a human. It's very shiny, but we still need people.
So, okay, just so I can recap on that, our position and your position or the
My position,
position.
my person, I
Your
am very like analog. I have notebooks everywhere. I have pencil and paper. Like
Yes.
I'm pro brain.
100%. So, but our position, well, your position on AI is that it's like a mixture between 100 duct taped parrots and a sonic screwdriver, because that is one hell of a. Firstly, I want to run that as a prompt and see if that would come out with. And I'm going to set one more piece of the context. Me and Manu work together in the AI team, and this is one of the wonderful reasons that he's part of the team, is that he is not just an expert in creativity, but also a divergent, contrarian thinker. And this is what we need when you have a team of awesome people, is you need people that think in different ways. So, okay, you've spoken about the parrots, the screwdrivers, the AI, the artificial intelligence. What about creativity then? Because we need, if you're going to put creativity more on a pedestal, what do you think
It's
of
the
creativity?
same. Like creativity, it's normally put on this pedestal like it's a gift from the gods, and it's something that only a few chosen one people have because it rained on them. And creativity, all humans are creative because creativity is just problem solving skills. You just solve different problems. But we somehow modern thinking has constrained everything to little boxes. So we just say now that art it's only doing like four things. Creativity is only doing like four things, and all people is creative because all people solve problems. All people cook, all people clean, all people get dressed. So I like to reframe that word because it's very loaded from creativity to just problem solving. And this is where the thinking about AI as a tool helps a lot, because if creativity is just solving a problem, then you need a fancy tool that's just solving a problem faster. And this all becomes way easier if we don't hype it up to be like this massive new changelog thing. It's the same thing we have been doing for millions of years. Now we're just like using a giant computer to do it.
Cool. So I'm going to take away from that. Don't be scared of it. Don't be intimidated by it. Either the creative side of it or the technological side of it. Both are achievable things that, if you try, that you'll most likely will find a route if you go in with that kind of mindset. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's just need to be open to learn, because it's always like self-doubt. It just, I would say the tools have like lowered the barrier of entry for some things. Like it's easier to get to a passable product with the help of artificial intelligence. Maybe if you need to get to an excellent product, of course you need a level of expertise because you need to be able to recognize something that it's actually great. But you can get to a passable product way easier than before, and this has been happening like gradually over time. Like if you use Adobe Illustrator, you get to something that used to be very hard to do with acrylic paint, and now almost anyone can do it on a computer. And if you look at human behavior through all this time, you can see that people is always just looking to do the hardest thing they can do with the tools they have. When people had analog tools, they were trying to produce results that look unreal, digital, like those pop art paintings with the dots. And then now that we have digital tools, people is trying to create things that look analog, like they're made with computers, but they need to look like if they were made by hand.
I wasn't expecting it to go so existential, but that's a really interesting observation. The correlation between the sophistication or the perceived sophistication of the tool and what you're trying to do. And it's nearly always unintended consequences is potentially a better name for this series, because this is where it always comes up. We always seem to do the opposite of what we intend to do, or try and do the opposite. Okay, I want to bring us back on course. I would like to go through 3 ways to enter this space. Like, what would you do if you started today? You've got a little bit of design skill. I'm going to say it. You've got a lot, but I'm going to say you've got a little bit of design skill. Everyone is creative. Where would you start specifically? What would you jump into? What would be your first protocol?
First of all, it's always respecting the creative process. So you need to open anything that you face, not thinking about the tools, but thinking about what the problem you're solving. So 3 basic questions: why, where, and how. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Where is this going to be used? And how is it going to be implemented? And that is going to give you all the context that you need if you ask deeply enough to see now how can you repurpose the tools you have to solve the problem. Now, in terms of like new tools that we have available, we used to have to, go on paper, make a sketch, go on Photoshop, make a sketch, then clean it up in Illustrator, and then all of these done by hand. What the tools, AI tools have gave us, it's a way to speed up this process in several ways. And I would like to propose a triad of basic entry tools to the AI space. And that will be ChatGPT, that is now integrated with DALL-E, Midjourney, and good old Photoshop, because good old Photoshop now has generative fill. And if I had to propose like specific uses for each one, I use ChatGPT normally to break like that starting moment where I need to translate an abstract idea to something. I literally ask, give me visual ideas for this, help me like develop an idea for this. And it's just having someone that chats with you. Literally, you can have a conversation with ChatGPT, and then from among all the things that are very generic, filter something that works.
What would you say, just like from your experience, how many generic things do you get back to? Like, what's the ratio? Because I'll give you mine afterwards, but like, what do you think its hit rate is in terms of coming up with something that is genuinely like a good hook, good creative hook, or like something that will like act as a little springboard to go, yes, let's go this direction? How often do you think it does it for you?
I say that it will be like 5 to 10% of the time I get something that I say, this is it. And normally I don't use it like as it was output. Yeah. Normally I just pick it up, then modify, then mix it with among other ideas.
I was 1 in 20 was going to be my one. The reason I say it is because I think this is why people stop, because they expect something better than it is. So if you expect it to come back 0 shot, like straight away with like, oh my God, this is groundbreaking, I never would have thought of this. And then you stop. That's where people, like, I think, fall off sometimes. If your expectation is you're dealing with a smart young teenager who's got some skills, but you definitely need to work through with them to navigate it, rather than you're working with the best possible friend to talk to or best possible colleague to talk to, you're working with someone right at the beginning of their career. 1 in 20 would be my rule of thumb. So 1 in 20 times it will come back, or one of its ideas will be not usable, useful.
Yeah, that's why it's important to just take it out of the pedestal. It's not that smart. I mean, it gets better, but it's not better. Like to solve a complex problem. It's really good to solve very specific thing. It's a screwdriver. But it's you're not gonna put your life in there and then it's gonna go like, you know what? I talked to God. God said you should do this and do this and do that. No.
Oh, it does that for me. I don't know how you're using it. Right. Okay, I'll stop interrupting. Now keep going.
That is a good segue to go into Midjourney. Midjourney is more or less the same. Like, don't expect to get a full solution from Midjourney. Midjourney is really good to solve and get images like that you need for a very specific purpose. It's hard to get consistency across images. But if you need to visualize an idea real quick, or if you need assets to photo bash a sketch that otherwise will take you a lot of time. You can just get a bunch of random sketches from Midjourney, photo bash them, and then you can invest all the time that you didn't put into making that sketch by hand into like doing like a very, very, very complex render in Illustrator, or just like polishing that up. But don't expect like a full final illustration in most cases, unless you need something really generic, and then it does the work. There is a lot of people doing like covers for catalogs, and even like hitting Buenos Aires. I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and like the Teatro Colón, that is one of the biggest theaters in Latin America. All of the covers for the programs of this year's program of plays, operas, and stuff, it was done with AI, and it has the vibe that they were looking for, and it works. I mean, only if you have a prejudice against AI, like me, you see, and then you go like, "Oh my God, they were lazy." But if you see it under the eyes of someone who's just looking for something pretty to look at, it's like, "Oh, this works."
Do you think? Oh my God, I'm not going to jump into that. You think they were lazy? Is that your?
No, lazy. No, I thought they were cheap because they could have hired someone. They have a bunch of money. They could have that. This country's in crisis, but they have the money to hire somebody.
Okay.
So it's no, but it's the same thing. Like when the Industrial Revolution came, and now you have high quality cups that are made by machines, but then it's a cup that is made by an artisan. The one that has a story, the one that has hands, has more value because it was made by somebody. And that is normally only that normally other artisans appreciate way more than the general public. The general public just want cups. But if I am an artisan, I want a cup with a history.
Fair enough. All right, your final. So you kind of touched on Photoshop, but maybe just like your final thought on Photoshop as part of that trifecta, that triad of tools.
Photoshop generative fill, it's nothing short of like a very shiny miracle because it used to take hours to complete pictures, to expand stuff. So it's very, very, very convenient in terms of it's a very practical use of AI, and it's very focused into solving very specific problems. And that's what makes it good. You have a picture, you need more background, you need to expand it. Beautiful. It does it very well most of the time. If you need to like literally select a piece of a picture and then regenerate an element, it does a very good work most of the time. And it can help you literally if you're photo bashing other images. You just select pieces and generate blanks, and it fills the spaces quite conveniently. So it's a major time saver. And you can see a pattern emerging here that it's that all of these tools are destined to solve a very specific part of the process, but they are not bringing me a full solution. They are just solving things that I discovered when I just asked myself, why am I doing this? Where am I going to use this solution? How is this solution going to be made? Very, very specific. I have like, we have 2 minutes left, but I have like an actual story of how we reduce time from like a 20-day project to like 4 days of execution thanks to these tools.
Go for it.
So we had a brief for a video that needed to be like a commercial, and it was like a 1.5 minute video that ended up being 2.5 minutes. We didn't have time to make assets. We barely had time to make a storyboard. It was a very nightmarish scenario. And we managed to generate, like, we had to generate, I'm just trying to formulate the words, but it was like an asset machine, a machine generating assets through Midjourney and then expanding that to Photoshop generative fill. And then we just cut all the pictures that we generated. We separated them into layers. We filled all the blanks with Photoshop. And then we placed them on After Effects and just moved 3D cameras through it. So we basically generated in 2 days all the assets for the film, and the remaining 2 days were literally just moving cameras around it, and we could focus all of the effort in animation. And if you put it on like on perspective, you could say like if I had more time, I could have invested a bunch of time on character animation on something and just take time out of stuff that was not going to be that relevant for the final product. And I think that's the ideal scenario for AI usage. Like you save time up on things that are not going to be that relevant in the final product, and then you put all of the effort you want to or you need to on something that is going to have a real impact.
Yeah, agreed. And I so thank you for sharing that story. I was thinking of the parallels of that to background and foreground, right? So things that you, even in the audio space, things that are closer to your ear, maybe you should have as the thing that you spend most time on, but maybe your music bed, maybe you need less time on. Things that are in the background that you rarely see, that you're only going to use in one scene of a motion project. Is it worth investing 20 hours and making that perfect when you can do it in half an hour? Because then you can focus on what's in the foreground. And so I think it's, what's interesting about that is previously we didn't necessarily have that option with that much leverage. You had to either compromise more in different areas. So it's a really good analogy, and I'm going to recap. If you were going to start today, you'd focus on the problems that you were solving. You're focusing on what people are asking you to do. You focus on the brief. You'd still have critical thought and critical thinking before you'd move into tooling and technique. That where you would start with is interrogation of ideas, unpacking of ideas, collaboration of ideas with ChatGPT that may start a visual hook. It kind of the key art or key visual or initial pass of something of a medium quality visual from Midjourney, and then taking that into Photoshop for some post-production with generative fill to tweak it and get it to roughly where you'd want it to be. Try that flow out from idea to art to post-production. And then that is quite a big area to expand from there. So I've got to wrap this up, but I'm going to ask is there any other thing that you would say to our lovely audience before we wrap up?
The only thing will be even though these tools are great, I would say never know when to go 100% just this. Never fully abandon any practice that you have. If you do traditional illustration, if you do drawing, because there are things that can only be learned by holding a pencil, by writing by hand, by actually painting. And if you put barriers between you and that, like typing a keyword, you're not gonna develop those skills. So this is a very good assistant, but it's not gonna do the work for you. You need to put down the work.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I need to find what we're going to be talking about next week. I've got this written down somewhere. Okay. Thank you very much, Manu. We stay tuned for more creative chats. We've got some subjects coming up of how to implement AI into creative workflows and how to overcome design capacity challenges, plus some case studies. So that's it from us. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Bye.